Good morning, everyone. Welcome to News Center Maine's Political Brew. Glad you could join us. We are joined today by longtime Democratic activist Betsy Sweet and Ray Richardson of WLOB Radio. Good morning to you both.
Good morning to you guys.
A lot of interesting developments in the controversial CMP hydropower transmission corridor this week. First, lawmakers in Augusta are considering 3 bills that would prevent foreign money from being spent in Maine political campaigns. It's aimed, of course, at Hydro-Quebec, and that company, owned by the province of Quebec, has already spent millions of dollars to try to defeat referendum questions aimed at stopping the project. Now, Maine already prohibits foreigners from contributing to the campaigns of candidates running for office. Should a foreign government entity be allowed to buy political ads for issues on the ballot? Betsy, we'll start with you.
No, they shouldn't. And interestingly, CMP is now owned not by people in this country. And, I just did a show on this myself, and it's the influence of foreign corporations should not be allowed in our electoral process. We are America. We should be making these decisions for ourselves. And I think that the question is, who are they representing? Right? They're not representing another side of Maine voters. They're representing a foreign economic interest, and that's not always in the same interest as the Maine people. So I think that they shouldn't, and I think it's right. And while we're at it, we could ban corporate contributions to our political elections.
Yeah, that's hard. Doesn't seem very likely. But Ray, what do you think about the idea of foreign governments being involved in our campaigns?
Well, I'll answer Betsy's last question statement first. I'm happy to ban corporate contributions if we also ban union contributions. Maybe we can agree on that. We could end all that money.
Right. I agree on that.
For me, I think that, look, this is something we ought to be looking at. There's no doubt about that. But this CMP thing is getting out of control. The legislature has gone back. They want to do more studies. They've gone through 3. Let me be very clear for anybody watching this. I support them. They do not pay me, no financial contributions. I just think it's a very good idea. I've studied it, and I think it's good for Maine. And I think they keep trying to change the rules in the middle of the ball game because there are interests out there, including big oil, who don't like this.
Of course, Ray, the opponents got a boost in court this week. There was a case that focuses on the lease of about 36 acres owned by the state. That's public land. Justice Michaela Murphy said the state needs to further analyze the effects. And the Maine Constitution says anything that substantially alters public lands has to be approved by a 2/3 vote in the legislature. And legislators are also considering this matter already. So how big of a roadblock is this?
I disagree with the judge's interpretation. This is not the Garden of Eden where God, Adam, and Eve have walked and no one else has. This already has power lines on it. It's been logged for years. I don't want to see the overdevelopment of Maine, but I think we just keep trying to find obstacles. I don't see how this is substantially different than what is already there. So I disagree with the judge's ruling.
Well, I think it is substantially different than what's already there. And I think there's a lot of people in Maine who would say it is the Garden of Eden. And that's the problem. And the reason we have these rules in place of why we can't alter Maine land without the approval of the legislature is to make sure that we don't have things that irreparably harm our environment. And so I think we have to follow the law.
Another big company making headlines again this week. Democratic leaders in the legislature last weekend took Maine Medical Center to task, accusing the hospital of mistreating nurses who are backing the effort to form a union. Betsy, does a letter from legislative leaders carry any particular weight here?
I don't know if a letter from legislators carry weight, but this has been an assault on unions, not just by the healthcare industry, but we see this, and unions are what created our middle class. Unions are the reason we don't work on Sundays and that 12-year-olds can't work in a factory. That's why we have unions. And so really, let the workers decide. Let the workers decide without undue influence from the corporate folks that the hospital has brought in, and from actually any outside influence. Let the workers decide if they will have more power and feel they got better working conditions and be able to provide better service with or without a union. That's where the decision should lie.
What do you think, Ray?
So I don't know whether legislators have any impact or not, and I think probably not. But we all have a mutual friend, Ethan Stremling, who put on social media that he had back surgery. He's the only guy I know who could politicize back surgery wearing a mask in support of a teachers union. Yeah. Look, I believe this about unions. I don't believe in public sector unions, but I believe that private entities have the right to form a union if they want to. And I think that they should be able to do it. Look, I'm not a union person, But if they want to do that, they want to collectively bargain. I would never do that personally. I always bargain for myself. I figure I'm my own best advocate. But if that's what they want to do, let them take a vote.
Is the attitude from Maine Health part of the outgrowth of, I should say, the consolidation of hospitals around the state? Is that an impact that perhaps we never thought about before, Betsy?
Well, sure, of course it is. I mean, it's impacted healthcare in the state. There are many, I mean, how many doctors do we know now that even have private practices anymore? They're almost all part of healthcare conglomerates. And my good friend Steve Mishu is probably going to call me and yell at me for this. But I don't think this consolidation is good.
And I agree with you there, Ray. I don't either. And I think that, it's not good for our health. It's not good for our healthcare system. It's also not good for workers because then they have a monopoly, right? If you're not working for one of those healthcare systems, then you're out. And if you don't have a union, I don't care what kind of strong advocate you are as an individual, Ray, you don't get anywhere. So I think this is really important and something we should all be paying attention to. And it impacts the cost of healthcare for all of us.
This week, Deb Holland was confirmed as the first Native American to serve in a president's cabinet ever. And the post is a particularly significant one for the tribe's interior. Ray, is this more than a symbolic victory for Native Americans?
So I want to be real clear. I grew up down south. I have the greatest admiration for Native Americans, particularly the Cherokee tribe. I've been fascinated by the tribes here in the state of Maine. So when I say what I say, I don't want anyone to think I'm being disrespectful. What bothers me about all of this, and Biden has done this in an unprecedented manner, about identity politics with his appointments. Maybe this person has merit, but what you've heard is first Native American, first transgendered person that will have a Senate vote, first Hispanic to head up the Department of Health and Human Services. I want to know what merit is. I only care about merit. I don't care color, gender, or any of that stuff. I do think as the Secretary of Interior, maybe after really centuries of mistreatment of Native Americans, maybe she'll bring a perspective to this that we haven't had in the government.
Well, I agree with the last couple of words that you said, which is, I think it's
not the
really,
first.
Not the first. The really, it's hugely important, not just for symbolism, but because of she's going to bring, not just about tribes, which is very important, but she is an incredible expert on land use and what's happening with our parks and lands nationally, which have been decimated in the last 4 years. And so, that old adage that if you're not at the table, you're usually on the menu has been really true for the tribes. And so now they finally have someone at the table. And it's true for all of the people that you talked about. It's not just about politics. It's about making sure that someone is at the table with a perspective that has been left out for centuries.
I don't disagree with that, Betsy. It's just all over the news. All you hear, first this, first that. Let's talk about their merit. Let's talk about their education and their experience and their expertise, which is why they should be there.
Right. Which is the news issue, not the issue of the candidate.
Right. I agree with that, by the way.
Here in Maine, the state has said no to Maine's Native American tribes for decades when they've asked to establish casinos and get the right to do that, which Native tribes across the country have been allowed to do. Now the tribes are making their case to legislators again, saying it's a matter of fairness and economic independence. Betsy, do you think lawmakers will say yes this time?
Yeah, I think we've seen a change. And, this really goes back to the Land Claims Settlement Act. We are going from treating them as municipalities to treating them as sovereign nations. And in that case, then they get to make the decision. Look, I'm agnostic about gambling. It's not my favorite thing, but I think it is not our decision to make. This is the decision of the tribes and as acting as sovereign nations. And so the work that's been done on the Land Claims Act recently to transform it into respecting them as sovereign nations, which I believe we should do, I think will have a big impact. And I think we may see this go finally.
Yeah, for me, I think this is maybe a little too late on the whole thing. We've got a couple of casinos here. I want to be clear again, I am a big supporter. The only referendum I supported was Oxford. I knew the people involved. They don't pay me. I want to be very clear about that. I just thought it was good for Maine. I feel like the Native Americans have been left out here, where in other places around the country they haven't. But we have two casinos here. Pat, you and I talked about it on my show on Thursday. You could stop in Boston or you could stop at Foxwoods in Connecticut. So how much out-of-state traffic are we going to tackle here? So this may be a little too late for the Native Americans.
And as we also talked about, I suspect some of the hope is they'll draw visitors from Canada if they put one, say, in Holton or Calais or someplace like that.
And that could be the case. I mean, we'll have to see. But, I think the state screwed it up from the beginning. If we were going to do this, what we should have done is done an RFP, gotten qualified people, then they could have bid on a license, and the state would have really benefited from it. Instead, we did things like we often do things in government the wrong way.
Well, and it's really up to them. I mean, that's the bottom line. It is really up to them. They can do the economic analysis of whether it's going to work or not, but it's up to them.
President Joe Biden spent decades in the Senate. He's made it clear he doesn't want to eliminate the filibuster rule, which can protect minorities, but he does support going back to the talking filibuster, meaning actually having to have someone speak and hold the floor if they want to delay a vote. Meanwhile, Mitch McConnell promises a scorched earth Senate if the filibuster rules are changed. Does McConnell's track record of obstructing Democratic policies mean something has to change, Ray?
Well, I'm not completely clear about what he said. I thought he said if we end the filibuster, then it would be scorched earth. I have no problem. I think that that's what they should do. Get out there and argue their point and talk to the cows come home. I don't like this idea. Well, we'll threaten to do it if you call a vote. So I think that that's hogwash. Let's do it the way it used to be done. I don't like the fact that Schumer's calling this a relic of Jim Crow laws, has pre-existed all of that. It seems like another way to demonize something. The filibuster is really a very useful tool in the Senate. The Senate's supposed to be a cooling off chamber. The passions are supposed to be in the House. I don't think we should get rid of it. I said the same thing when we were in the majority as well.
And yet it's been used like that. You know, I think it's funny about Mitch McConnell calling it scorched earth. It's like, well, what does he think he's been doing? Like, I would say that we've already gotten to that place, right? And that's how he used it last time. And so I think that it has been completely overused and used to prevent things they know that people support, that their members will have to vote for because their constituents support it. So it's not a tool of legislation. It is a tool of political control. And it is being used to thwart the importance of really important legislation like Jim Crow, like the Civil Rights Act, and now like voting rights. So it is a tool that has become anachronistic and has become a club when it was meant to be a rarely used thing that would actually bring more attention and maybe a cooling off to it. It has been totally misused, and I think largely by Mitch McConnell himself. So I think it's time to make some big changes, if not get rid of it altogether.
Well, let's not forget our friends in the Senate before that on the other side of the aisle who used it as well. But to your point, Betsy, it should be used infrequently, and they should have to get out there and stand on the floor, just like we saw in that great movie, Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. That's what it was intended to do. Hey, look, we don't call him Mitchie the Swamp Turtle for no reason. We love him when he does what we want him to do, and we're not happy with him when he doesn't. He is a swamp turtle. There's just no getting around it. There's actually a book about him called Mitchie the Swamp Turtle. I don't know.
It sounds like a children's book. I like it.
It is.
Let's wrap up with the winners and losers in politics this week. Ray, we'll start with you.
The only thing I'm going to talk about here is the loser, which is the city of Portland. If, in fact, Milestone stays closed permanently, they're going temporarily closed here. They say it's a shortage of staff. I don't know what it is. I'm trying to find out. This is a facility that does God's work, and the churches need to get involved and our citizens need to get involved, because if Milestone goes away, even temporarily, we will have people who are suffering through addiction lying in the streets, because these are really, Milestone is the triage unit of people who are addicted.
Amen to that. And Betsy?
So my loser of the week is the police officers and some of the news media that have dismissed this attack on the Asian Americans in Georgia as somebody having a bad day, of it not being a hate crime, not really calling it what it is. My winner of the week is Senator Reverend Warnock from Georgia, who, if you haven't listened to his speech on voting rights, you must go and do it, because he talks about it used to be that the electors that we elected are elected officials, but now we have elected officials who are trying to choose the voters, and that cannot stand in a democracy. So he is my winner for the week.
Betsy and Ray, thank you both so much. Thank you for being with us. We'll see you next time. News Center Maine is back after this.